Welcome back to In Focus Kentucky. On today's episode, we're focusing on Hispanic Heritage Month and sharing how those in our state are celebrating the Latino heritage. And joining me now is Kentucky State Senator Ralph Alvarado, who represents District 28, which covers Clark, Fayette, and part of Montgomery counties. Senator Alvarado is a physician and was the first Hispanic elected to the Kentucky State Senate back in 2014. Thanks so much for joining me.
Yes, my pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Now let's first start with you sharing what Hispanic Heritage Month means to you and why it's important for all Kentuckians and Americans to celebrate and recognize this month.
Sure. Well, I think it's I think it's neat that we've been able to recognize a month for Latinos. I think it's important in a country where we have multiple cultures. We have people from all backgrounds, from all places all over the world that have come and made a melting pot of what America is to recognize, I think, groups that have made large contributions. I think really Hispanics at this point is one of the largest minority groups in the country. And I think the fun part of it is just to recognize what the contributions that Hispanics have made for the country when it comes to service in the military, people that start businesses in the country as well. I think it's an opportunity for us to celebrate that, and it's an opportunity for us to recognize those contributions from people too.
And for viewers that may not be aware of kind of what your background is and your heritage, share with us that.
Yeah, so my father was from Costa Rica, my mom from Argentina. It can be a long story, but to make a long story short, my dad, when he was a young man, he was born in 1919, so he passed away several years ago. He would have been 100 next year, but wanted to serve in World War II. Petitioned the American government while he was in Costa Rica to be brought in to be able to fight in the war. He received 3 rejection letters. With the 4th one, they said, "Come on, we'll take you on." His mother got sick. He missed his flight, never made it, and took care of his mom. She passed away from the illness, and then always thought, I'll never have a chance to be an American. Never had a chance to come to the United States. And so eventually, throughout his life, he met an individual who worked with him with United Fruit Company, who then, when he was coming back to the States, said, "Hey, I'll sponsor you if you want to come back." And my dad came. He was in Berkeley in the Bay Area in California, and my father moved there back in the 1960s. Started getting work. My mother had come to the States for higher education over at Stanford University, and wound up working with my father for an encyclopedia company. And they kind of fell in love, and the rest is kind of a typical immigrant story, but they raised us out in California as kids. And so then my brother and I were born here in the States. And my father always instilled a very deep pride for this country, that he knew that it was his adopted country. And once he came to America, he became an American, learned the language, and insisted that my brother and I, obviously take a lot of pride in being Americans and living in the States and knowing what that means and the sacrifice that my parents had to come here to be able to have that opportunity.
And viewers, they may not be aware that you are actually Kentucky's first Hispanic that was elected to the state Senate back in 2014. So talk about the importance of that, and also being able to hopefully potentially inspire other individuals to kind of follow into your footsteps.
Sure. I mean, it's one of those things that when it occurred, I think some people were surprised that I was the first that we hadn't happened to this point. Obviously, still within the entire population of Kentucky, it's still a small minority population in the state, but for me, it's a matter of not so much a pride of personal pride, but it's a pride for the entire group of Latinos and Hispanics. I think people, when they recognize that, I think a lot of kids have come to me, asked me what it's like. I think the neat part of it has been, I've had an opportunity to go to speak to a lot of churches, and I have a lot of 16, 18-year-old kids come to me and want to do internships. They come out and do internships with me up in Frankfurt, and they can kind of experience that and see what it's like. I think the importance really is just, again, to recognize that Kentucky is not just one-dimensional in the faces that are represented that live here, that we have people from multiple and many backgrounds, whether it be urban, rural, people that are African-American, Hispanic, Asian Americans. We have got more and more people getting involved in the process to represent more voices and more faces that are out there. So I think it's important, the more diversity that we have, to let the rest of the country know that Kentucky's more than just one look. We've got multiple looks out there.
Now, you are a physician by trade, and you actually are currently serving as a co-chair of the Diabetes Medical Emergency Response Task Force, and you all just had your first meeting within the last week or so. So why is it important to have a task force like this, but also why did you want to jump on as one of the co-chairs?
So, well, I was appointed as a co-chair by President Stivers. We passed a resolution this past year. Donna Mayfield, who's my state representative in Clark County, who's diabetic, had an emergency situation, and her sugars were found to be very, very high. She was incoherent at the time and had some difficulty in having the first responders administer insulin to her in that situation because they weren't authorized to do that. And so she fortunately did well after that episode, but took it upon herself to start looking into what can we do as a state to make sure that our first responders have an ability to administer insulin and for diabetics. And we have a growing number of diabetics in the state, more and more people that are getting diagnosed. And so she thought about putting together this task force to start getting some recommendations for the legislature on what we can do to help equip our first responders to be able to handle emergency situations with diabetes. And I think it may even be a broader, we may take a broader look at what we can do as a General Assembly to help with diabetes awareness, with treatment, making sure we have education, proper treatment courses from insurance companies, from ambulance services, from hospitals. And so it's a group of emergency first responders, firefighters, EMS individuals, citizens that are in the Commonwealth as well. Danny Bentley, who's also the co-chair, he's a representative from Eastern Kentucky who's co-chairing that with me. We have 3 other representatives that are also on, from members of the General Assembly who are also on the committee. And our job is to start getting input, kind of gathering research and seeing what kind of recommendations the committee puts forth for legislation in the future. And
I know that with you representing District 28, which covers Clark, Fayette, and parts of Montgomery County here in the Bluegrass State, there are a lot of events and celebrations throughout the entire year with the Hispanic Heritage Month, but one of those major events happens in the city of Lexington. I know you've attended many times. So talk about that and why it's important to have events that, again, celebrate this particular history.
Sure, El Festival Latino. I tell people that's the best block party in Kentucky. If you haven't been, I would encourage everybody who's watching to go. It happens in September. It's over a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And it really celebrates, again, the diversity in culture. When you look at Latin America and Hispanics, you know, people from America might look at that as one kind of homogenous group. But within Latin America, it's people from all appearances, all looks. Languages are a bit different as well. So if you look at people that have German and Italian background who, you know, their complexion might be very, very fair. You have people that are African American within kind of Colombia, perhaps, in parts of Brazil, and you look at people within the Caribbean region. You've got people that have some Indian, kind of native Indian background as well, European mix, all of that within Latin America, and we all share a commonality. So when we all get together, the language is obviously similar, the dialects might be a little bit different, the slang might be different, the foods are different too. And so when you get everybody together, it's a celebration of all those individual countries where people have come from, celebrating, recognizing their backgrounds, letting people express their pride of being from those areas. But then it's also about all of us coming together as Americans and pledging the flag and singing the national anthem and celebrating being Kentuckians. And so I just consider it very fun. There's people there that have multiple political backgrounds too. It's all forgotten for that weekend. Everybody just has a good time, has fun. We celebrate foods. We celebrate being diverse and different, but being one. And I would encourage people to come out. They'd have a great time. They also have an opportunity to reach out for people when it comes to healthcare issues also during that time and celebrate the arts within the Hispanic community. So it's really a blast. It's the best party in Lexington every year, probably in Kentucky in my opinion. And I would invite people to come out every year to celebrate with us.
Well, Senator Alvarado, we really appreciate you joining us here on In Focus Kentucky and sharing the work that you have been doing here throughout your district and also throughout the state of Kentucky.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, thanks so much for watching In Focus Kentucky. You can watch this or any of our past shows online at SpectrumInFocus.com. And of course, you can follow me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search at Mario Anderson TV. Have a great week.